Let us begin quietly, for truth is never revealed in noise. Truth comes when the mind grows still, when striving ceases, when we no longer reach outward in desperation, but turn inward to the presence that has eternally been our life. My friends, the great misunderstanding of the human race is this. We have been taught to find God, to plead with God, to seek God as though God were somewhere else. We have been instructed to reach outside ourselves for a power beyond our grasp, a being far removed from our daily experience, a deity who must be persuaded to look kindly upon our needs. But this is not the teaching of the Master. This is not the revelation of Christ. And this is not the truth that brings healing, supply, or peace. For centuries we have prayed as beggars, imagining that our lack must somehow move the infinite to compassion. We have believed that if we cry loudly enough, if we repeat our petitions often enough, if we plead sincerely enough, God might intervene and offer relief. But listen closely now, for this is the beginning of spiritual freedom. There is no God outside yourself to reach for. There is no distant power to persuade. There is no heavenly being withholding good until you have earned it. God is not something you must attract. God is the very essence of the I that is aware in this moment. This is the truth Jesus revealed when he said, I am. Not I am a person. Not I am special. Not I am separate from you. He spoke from the infinite, that is the identity of every individual being. I am the presence of God as consciousness itself. And so the great misunderstanding of God is simply this. We believe we are human creatures trying to reach divinity, when in truth we are divine presence appearing as humanity. We believe we must convince God to enter our lives when God has never once departed from our being. If you search for God outside yourself, you will not find him, for you have placed divinity where divinity is not. You have projected the infinite into the distance, while the kingdom has always been within your own awareness. The moment you cease reaching outward, the moment you stop begging, pleading, petitioning, a great stillness opens within you. Not the stillness of absence, but the stillness of presence. It is here that the spiritual life begins, not with effort, but with recognition. Not with trying to get God to act, but with realizing that God is already the life, the mind, the substance, the breath, the consciousness of your being. The Master never taught you to pray for God to do something. He taught you to awaken to what already is. And so, as we begin this journey together, set aside the old belief in a God who must be called from afar. Set aside the notion that you, as a separate self, must reach upward to a power beyond your reach. Be still and let this truth take root. The I that lives you, the I that sees, the I that knows, is the presence of God itself. You are not beginning a path toward God. You are remembering the God that has always been your own identity. And with this recognition, the entire nature of prayer begins to change. For you no longer pray as a beggar, but as one awakening to the infinite that has never left you. Let us move gently into the next unfoldment, for spiritual understanding unfolds only in quietness. We do not rush. We do not grasp. We receive. My friends, the reason petitionary prayer fails is not that God refuses to answer, nor that your plea is unworthy, nor that you have somehow fallen short. It fails for one reason alone. It begins with a false premise. Petition assumes separation. It assumes that you, a human being, encased in flesh and burdened by circumstance, must somehow reach a God who is elsewhere, above, beyond. distant. It assumes two identities, a needy creature here and a powerful deity somewhere else. But where there are two, there cannot be oneness. And where there is no oneness, there can be no spiritual realization. Petition is the language of separation. It declares, without meaning to, God, I am here and you are there. God, I lack and you possess. God, I am in need and you must supply. But listen to the Master's words. I and the Father are one, not two. One. If you are one with the Father, to whom are you praying? Why must you ask? When the infinite is your very being, why plead when the fullness of God is the substance of your existence? Do you see the error? The moment you beg, the moment you plead, the moment you imagine that you must convince God to act, you have stepped out of oneness and into a dream of separateness. You have made God an object outside yourself. And in that moment, the channel of spirit becomes obscured, not blocked. Spirit cannot be blocked, but hidden by your own belief. Petition is not answered because there is no one to receive the petition. There is no God outside the eye of your own being. There is no external power to persuade, no distant force to move by emotional appeal. The infinite does not respond to begging. It responds to recognition. This is why Jesus never begged God. He never pleaded. He never said, Father, please heal this one. He never attempted to convince God. He simply recognized the presence of God as the very life of the one before him. And that recognition, that simple, clear realization of oneness was the healing in the infinite way. We never pray to change God's attitude. God's nature is eternally complete. We never pray to bring God's power into a situation. God's presence is already here. We pray only to correct the one error that binds all humanity, the belief that we are separate from the source of our being. Petition fails because it addresses a God that does not exist, a God outside, a God apart, a God who must be moved or convinced. This is the God of human imagination, not the God of revelation. And so the moment you begin to search outward, the moment you try to reach, the moment you attempt to activate a distant power, you step away from the truth of your own identity. But when you cease reaching, when you stop pleading, when you rest in the quiet realization that the I that I am is the presence and power of God, then prayer becomes communion, not communication. It becomes listening, not speaking. It becomes awareness, not petition. And in that awareness, the sick are restored. The fearful find peace. The confused receive guidance, and supply flows without effort. Not because God has been persuaded, but because you have awakened from the illusion of separation. Let this truth settle deeply. Every plea to an external God is a denial of the God within. Not intentionally, never intentionally, but factually. We do not correct the error by trying harder. We correct it by awakening. And so today, let your prayer be a turning inward, a resting, a listening, a silent realization. The Father and I are one. There is no distance to cross, no separation to bridge, no God to persuade, only a presence to recognize. In this recognition, all true prayer begins. Let us move now into the heart of the Master's revelation, for without understanding this, the spiritual life remains a struggle of ideas rather than an experience of divine presence. When Jesus uttered the words, I am, he was not speaking as a man. He was not referring to a personal identity, nor was he announcing the superiority of an individual self. He was speaking from the consciousness that precedes personality, precedes history, precedes form. He was speaking from the infinite. The words I am were not a declaration of who he was, but of what he was. And still more than that, they were a revelation of what you are when the veil of personal sense is lifted. Listen again to the Master's words, not as scripture, not as doctrine, but as living truth. I am the way. I am the light. I am the resurrection. I am the life. This I is not the carpenter's son, not the teacher walking the hills of Galilee, not the figure painted in stained glass windows. This I is the presence that animated him. It is the presence that animates you. It is the divine identity of all spiritual being. This I is God expressing as individual consciousness. And so when Jesus spoke those words, he was not exalting himself. He was revealing the nature of your own identity. For if the I that spoke through Jesus were personal, then his teaching would have no universal meaning. His works would be unattainable. His life would be an exception instead of a demonstration. But he said, the things I do, you shall do also. This is possible only because the same I that lived through him lives through you. The same presence, the same life, the same spirit, the same God being is the true essence of your existence. When Jesus spoke I am, he invited you to look beyond the mask of the human self and behold the eternal self behind it. He did not ask you to worship the man. He asked you to awaken to the presence. He did not tell you to adore the form. He told you to recognize the consciousness. He did not command you to imitate his actions. He called you to realize your identity. But what has happened through the centuries? Religion has placed Jesus on a pedestal, so high, so distant, so unreachable, that the message he came to reveal has been lost behind the worship of the messenger. And so humanity has repeated again and again, I am only human. I am weak. I am sinful. I am limited. But the Master never used the words I am to describe limitation. He never said, I am sick. He never said, I am poor. He never said, I am afraid. He spoke from the infinite presence that knows no limitation. And now we come to the essence. Every time you speak, I am, you are invoking the divine identity. The question is not whether the infinite answers you. The question is, what identity are you claiming when you say I am? If you say, I am anxious, I am lonely, I am lost, you have attached the name of God to a temporary appearance, not because you intend to, but because the human mind does not know the difference between the I of personal sense and the I of spiritual being. Jesus did know the difference. This is why his words carried power. He spoke not as a personality, but as presence. And this is the call of the spiritual path, to know within ourselves that the I which watches, the I which observes, the I which is aware in this moment is not the human ego, but the infinite I am. The Christ is not a person. The Christ is a consciousness, the divine identity of every individual being. When the Master said, I am, he was not claiming something for himself. He was inviting you to discover the very same presence as the truth of your life. Let this realization become clear. The I am that spoke through Jesus is the I am that is living you right now. not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally in the language of spirit. We do not become the I am. We recognize that we have never been anything else. And with this recognition, the spiritual life begins to unfold with an ease, a peace, a grace that no human effort can produce. For now, the false I, the personal sense of self, begins to dissolve, and the true I, the Christ identity, begins to shine through. This is the meaning of I am, not a statement, but a revelation. And now, let us turn to one of the most subtle yet profound errors in human experience, the misuse of the words I am. For you see, my friends, the name I am is not a casual phrase. It is the sacred name of God. It is the identity of the infinite. It is the presence that spoke through the prophets, through the Master, through the ages of mystical realization. I am is the name of the divine self. When Moses asked for God's identity, he did not hear a theology, nor an explanation, nor a doctrine. He heard only this: I am that I am, the pure, untouched, unconditioned being. And yet today, without understanding, we attach this holy name to every fleeting shadow that passes across human experience. We say, I am sick, I am poor, I am broken, I am anxious, I am lost, I am weak, I am not enough. And in those words, we unwittingly place the seal of the infinite upon a condition that is never true of our real nature. We declare that the temporary circumstance is the identity of the eternal. We bind the limitless to the limited. We tie the infinite to the transient. And then we wonder why suffering continues, not because God has ordained suffering, but because we have claimed it as I. Beloved friends, listen gently now. You have never once experienced a condition that belonged to the I am. You have experienced many conditions that belong to the body, many emotions that belong to the mind, many appearances that belong to this world of form, but none of these are the self. The I that I am is untouched by sickness. The I that I am is never imprisoned in lack. The I that I am cannot be in fear. The I that I am is the infinite presence, eternal and whole, ever complete, ever free. When you say, I am sick, you attach the divine identity to the passing sensation of the body. When you say, I am broke, you merge the infinite source with a temporary financial picture. When you say, I am afraid, you attribute fear to a presence which knows nothing but peace. Not one of these statements has ever been true of the I am. They are true only of the human sense of self, the false sense, the personal sense, the sense of separation. And so, the first step in spiritual healing is not to fight the appearance, not to declare it unreal with the mind, not to attempt to override it with human thought, but simply to withdraw the sacred name I am from the condition. You may say, yes, the body feels discomfort, but I am is the life of God, perfect and whole. Or, yes, the bank account shows limitation, but I am is infinite supply appearing. Or, yes, the emotions tremble with fear, but I am is peace itself. You see, not denial, but correct identification. The mistake is not in the appearance. The mistake is in claiming the appearance as I. You are not asked to ignore the body. You are not asked to deny the emotion. you are asked to recognize that these are not the identity of your being. The I am is the reality behind all form. The I am is the presence that observes, that witnesses, that remains untouched by any condition that arises. In this recognition, the false I, the one made of fear, the one formed from past experience, the one shaped by human belief, begins to dissolve. And as it dissolves, the true I am shines through. This is the essence of spiritual healing. Not changing appearances, but ceasing to identify with them. Not fixing the body, but realizing it is not the self. Not reshaping the world, but recognizing the one who is not of this world. For as long as you attach the name I am to a condition of lack or fear or limitation, you imprison yourself in that appearance. But the moment you reclaim the I am as the presence of God within you, something begins to shift quietly, silently, without effort. A light dawns, a peace arises, the burden lifts, and healing begins. Not because you have manipulated the appearance, not because you have fought the condition, but because you have removed the holy name from the illusion and returned it to the infinite. Beloved, this is the beginning of spiritual freedom. Never again attach the name I am to anything you do not wish to make permanent. Reserve that name for the truth of your being, and that truth is always whole, complete, abundant, fearless, eternal. Let us now enter into the heart of spiritual practice. Not a technique, not a ritual, not a method to change the outer scene, but a quiet inner turning in which the false sense of self dissolves and the light of the I am shines forth. Practicing the presence is nothing more and nothing less than withdrawing identification from whatever the senses report and resting in the truth of what you are, not what you hope to become, not what you pray to attain, but what you already are. In this instant, before thought, before fear, before the mind makes its claim, we begin gently, not with effort, not with strain, but with a simple pause. The pause is the doorway to realization. Whenever fear arises, whenever the body cries out, whenever the mind begins its story of lack, whenever the world appears threatening or uncertain, stop for a moment, be still, and ask quietly, who is the I that is aware of this? Do not answer with the mind. Do not reason. Do not analyze, for the mind will always point you back to the personal self that believes it is separate, fragile, vulnerable. Instead, let the question open within you like a silent flower. Who is the I that sees? Who is the I that hears? Who is the I that feels the sensation in the body? Who is the I that notices the fear? Who is the I that witnesses the appearance of lack? This I is not the body. This I is not the emotion. This I is not the story you have carried from childhood to this moment. This I is the presence of God appearing as your consciousness. When you pause and turn from the appearance to the one who beholds the appearance, you have withdrawn identity from the condition. You have taken the first step in practicing the presence. Now, you do not deny the appearance. Denial is mental activity, and mental activity has no power in spirit. You simply refuse to grant it identity. The pain may remain for a moment, but you no longer say, I am in pain. You recognize the body feels pain, but I am is untouched. The lack may still be visible in numbers, but you no longer say, I am lacking. You recognize the appearance shows limitation, but I am his infinite supply. The fear may still arise in the mind, but you no longer say, I am afraid. You recognize the mind trembles, but I am is peace itself. You see the difference? It is not resistance. It is not manipulation. It is not positive thinking. It is simply the truth, gently acknowledged. In this moment of recognition, you step out of the false identity and into the real. You do not try to change the world. You let go of the world as your identity. You rest in the I am as the only presence and power. This is practicing the presence. The world may not shift instantly, but something deeper shifts your sense of self, the old I, the fearful I, the needy I begins to fade. And as this false sense dissolves, the outer appearance, which was only the reflection of that false sense, begins to change without effort. Healing arises not because you fought the condition, but because you stopped calling it I. Supply flows not because you begged, but because you ceased identifying with lack. Peace dawns not because you controlled the mind, but because you no longer believed that the mind's activity was the activity of your being. Practicing the presence is the simple, profound art of remembering what you are and forgetting what you are not. It is resting in the I am until the world of appearance yields to the truth of being. Each pause, however small, however brief, is a step toward freedom. For every time you turn inward to the presence and withdraw identification from the condition, you loosen the chains of personal sense and awaken to the infinite reality that has always been your true identity. This, beloved friends, is the beginning of grace. Let us turn now to an area that troubles nearly every seeker who comes to the spiritual path. The question of supply, of livelihood, of money, of security in this world. And let us speak plainly and gently, for fear concerning supply is one of humanity's greatest burdens. The human mind believes that supply is something external, something that flows toward us from jobs, from people, from business, from the movement of money in the world. And because the mind sees supply as external, it imagines that supply can be withheld, can be lost, can be threatened, can be taken away. And so it worries, it strives, it struggles, it pleads with God to send more, to open doors, to change conditions. But this plea, my friends, is built upon the same false premise that causes all suffering, the belief in separation. As long as you believe that supply comes from outside yourself, you will live in fear of its disappearance. As long as you believe that a job, a person, an investment, a nation's economy is the source of your supply, you will cling to those forms and tremble at the thought of losing them. But listen now, for this truth dissolves fear. God is your supply, and God is the I am of your own being. Supply is not something God gives. Supply is something God is, and God is the life of your consciousness. Therefore, supply is not a commodity, not a paycheck, not a channel of income. Supply is the infinite activity of the presence, appearing in whatever form is needed at any given moment. Your job, your business, your clients, these are channels, but they are not the source. The source is the invisible, and the invisible is the I am. Goldsmith often said, when you understand the nature of God, you understand the nature of supply. God is infinite, therefore supply is infinite. God is omnipresent, therefore supply is everywhere. God is eternal, therefore supply cannot begin or end. God is the substance of your being, therefore supply is as close as your own consciousness. You do not need to ask God for money. You do not need to beg the infinite to send you more. You do not need to convince God to care about your finances. God does not distribute supply. God is supply. And the I am, that is your being, is already filled with the fullness of God. So what stands in the way? Only the belief that supply must come through human channels. Only the belief that the outer world has power to give or withhold. The moment your attention shifts from the outer channel to the inner source, fear begins to dissolve. You notice something remarkable as you stop trying to get supply from the outer world. The outer world becomes more cooperative, more abundant, more harmonious, not because you forced it, but because you have aligned with the invisible. Let me say this clearly. Supply flows to the degree that you no longer look to the world for it. When you lean upon the invisible, the visible rearranges itself without struggle. This is the meaning of the Christ's words. Take no thought for your life. Your Father knoweth. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. These were not poetic comforts. They were revelations of spiritual law. Take no thought, for thought is always an attempt to manage the outer world. Your Father knoweth, because supply is contained within the nature of God, which is your own identity. The kingdom, the fullness, the abundance, the grace, is not something coming to you. It is something expressing through you. And so, beloved, you may now stop asking God for money. You may stop begging for supply. You may stop pleading for more, not because you must be stoic, not because suffering is holy, but because you cannot ask for what is already present. The I am is infinite supply. The I am is the bread of life. The I am is the living substance of all form. As you rest in this recognition, thought loosens, fear softens, and supply begins to flow in ways you could not have imagined. The channel may change, but the source remains eternal. The form may shift, but the presence never wavers. When you cease asking, you begin receiving. When you stop grasping, you begin overflowing. When you trust the invisible, the visible responds. This is the spiritual law of supply. Now let us go deeper into a truth that stands at the very core of spiritual healing. There is a reason why the Master healed effortlessly, why the prophets healed without techniques, why the mystics of every age touched the sick and saw them restored. It was not because they held more faith than others. It was not because they possessed a special power. It was not because God favored them above the rest of humanity. It was because they understood identity. They knew who they were. They knew what they were. And they knew what the I am is, the presence of God, expressing as individual being. Let us speak plainly now. Healing does not happen in the body. Healing happens in identity. The body, whatever its condition, is not the self. It is the instrument, the vehicle, the temple, but never the identity. When you say, I am sick, you have taken the infinite I and placed it in a body made of dust. You have taken the eternal and confined it to a temporary sensation. You have taken the presence and merged it with an appearance. No wonder suffering persists. For the moment you identify as the body, you have stepped out of truth and into illusion. But listen gently now. The I that I am cannot be sick. The I that I am cannot be harmed. The I that I am cannot deteriorate, age, or crumble. The I am is spirit, incapable of disease, untouched by physical sensation. The body may show symptoms, just as a leaf may turn in the wind, just as waves may rise and fall on the ocean. But the ocean is not disturbed by its waves. So it is with you. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. You are not the form. You are the formless. You are not the body. You are that which animates the body, and healing begins. The moment you cease identifying with the condition, you do not deny the sensation. You do not pretend the pain is not there. You simply refuse to say, I am that pain. Instead, you gently recognize, yes, the body feels discomfort, but I am is whole. Yes, the nerves tremble, but I am is peace. Yes, the mind fears the outcome, but I am is eternal life. The human mind cannot grasp this, for the mind is bound to the realm of appearances. The mind believes what the senses report, but the I am is not the mind. It is the presence behind the mind. When you shift identity from the personal I to the infinite I am, the appearance begins to change because the false sense of self is no longer sustaining it. In spiritual healing, we never heal the body. We heal the sense of self that believes the body is its identity. And once that false sense dissolves, the body, which is nothing more than the outer symbol of inner consciousness, begins to respond to the truth that has been realized. This is why Jesus never prayed, Father, heal this body. He never said, let this sickness be removed. He simply recognized the presence of God as the true identity of the one before him, and the body aligned itself with the truth of the I am. My friends, you are not trying to fix matter. You are awakening from identification with matter. You are not trying to change the body. You are discovering that the body has never been yourself. When you know yourself as spirit, as the infinite I am, the body becomes harmonious because it is no longer carrying the burden of being you. I, the true I, cannot be sick. I, the true I, cannot be diminished. I, the true I, is the life of God, individualized as your being. And as you rest in this realization, not as a thought, not as an affirmation, but as a deep inner recognition, the appearance of disease begins to dissolve in the light of truth. For healing is not a miracle. Healing is the natural result of correct identification. Let us now come into the great transition point of the spiritual life, the moment when you no longer approach God as one who lacks, as one who begs, as one who seeks rescue, but as one who recognizes the presence already dwelling within your own being. This is the beginning of grace. Grace is not something God gives. Grace is what God is. It is the infinite presence expressing itself. The moment you cease trying to make something happen. You see, my friends, petition belongs to the human sense of life. Petition declares, I am here, God is there, and I must call him forth. But in the state of grace, there is no here and there. There is only the one presence, appearing as you, as me, as all creation. Grace begins the moment you stop asking God to act and start recognizing that God is the only activity. Grace begins the moment you stop trying to bring God into your life and start realizing that God is your life. Grace begins the moment you release the belief that you must change the outer world and discover that the kingdom is within. Let us speak plainly. Petition is an insult to oneness, not because God is offended. God cannot be offended, but because petition assumes the absence of God. The moment you plead, you proclaim separation. But listen, the presence does not come when you pray. It is revealed when you stop. God has never once entered your life through your effort. God has never once responded to your emotional pleading. God has never once acted because you asked him to. God acts because God is. And when you cease projecting God outward, when you release the human idea of a deity who must be persuaded, you begin to experience life in a new dimension, the dimension of grace. In grace, supply flows without strain, guidance appears without seeking, healing unfolds without effort, problems dissolve without struggle, not because you have found a secret technique, but because the false sense of separation has loosened its grip. Grace is the natural state of one who rests in the I am. When you rest in I am, you no longer reach for the world. You no longer chase solutions. You no longer fear outcomes. You no longer attempt to manipulate appearances. You simply abide. You abide in the quiet awareness that the presence is already here. The power is already here. The life is already here. And when you abide, the outer begins to conform to the inner truth. Peace replaces worry, not because you forced it, but because the I am has no opposite. Supply replaces lack, not because you demanded it, but because the I am is infinite substance. Healing replaces illness, not because you fought the condition, but because the I am cannot be touched by disease. My friends, grace is not earned. Grace is not achieved. Grace is not won by moral effort or spiritual performance. Grace is revealed in the absence of effort. This is why the Master said, My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, not through striving, not through pursuit, not through gaining, but through the simple recognition of the presence that already is. And so we come to this moment together, the quiet moment where petition falls away, the moment where the seeker is no longer a seeker, the moment where the beggar is no longer a beggar, the moment where the worshiper is no longer separate from the one he worships. This is where spiritual life truly begins. The ending of asking, the ending of reaching, the ending of searching, and the dawning realization that I am is the fulfillment of every need. Rest here, for this is the doorway to the state of grace. And now, my friends, as we come gently to the close of this sharing, let us not think of it as an ending, but as a returning to that which has always been, that which will always be, that which was never absent, even for a breath, for everything we have explored together, the illusion of separation, the misuse of the sacred name, the presence of supply, the truth of identity, the state of grace, all of it comes to rest in one simple, eternal realization. I am not the personal I, not the historical I, not the anxious, striving I, but the infinite I, the presence of God, individualized as your very being. You see, the spiritual path does not take you somewhere. It brings you home, home to the self. You have always been beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, beneath the story. The I am has never been sick. The I am has never lacked. The I am has never feared. The I am has never struggled. All struggle belongs to the false identity we have carried like a burden for lifetimes. But tonight, in this stillness, in this gentle recognition, you may lay that burden down. You may release the I that was never you. You may return to the presence that has forever been your true self. It does not matter what the world appears to be. It does not matter what condition rises in the body, what noise arises in the mind, what circumstance presents itself. In the outer scene, appearances come and go, rise and fall, shift and dissolve, but the I am remains. It is the unmoving center within every moving form. It is the light within every shadow. It is the peace beneath every disturbance. It is the supply beneath every need. It is the life beneath every heartbeat. And it is the truth of you. Let us rest for a moment in that recognition, not with thought, not with effort, not with striving, simply resting. I am before fear, before form, before circumstance. I am before the mind names, before the world judges, before the senses report. I am one with the Father, one with the Source, one with the infinite. You do not need to hold to this truth with discipline. You do not need to guard it with tension. Simply return to it whenever you remember, in moments of fear, in moments of gratitude, in moments of stillness. Let the return be gentle. Let it be natural. Let it be a homecoming. And as you return again and again, you will discover something beautiful. The I am begins to live you. It breathes you, moves you, guides you, supplies you, heals you, expresses through you without effort and without fear. This is the life of grace. Not a life you create, but a life revealed as the personal sense dissolves and the infinite shines through. So as we part now, we do not part in spirit. We rest in the same presence, the same life, the same I am that binds all being in one invisible harmony. Carry nothing with you from this moment. No technique, no method, no mental strain. Carry only this gentle recognition. I am, and in that all is fulfilled. When you forget, return. When fear arises, return. When gratitude rises, return. When silence calls, return. For the I am is not a practice. It is the truth. And the truth sets you free.